Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Mark Shinesk, Senior Application Engineer with Seiler Design Solutions. And in this webinar, we are going to show the how to do a VR rendering using the AEC Collection. We'll walk through a presentation using this rendering of this bridge. I have a bridge model up. Let's see if you guys can see. Can you see what I'm seeing here? I can't see. That's okay. Good. Okay, so I'm showing my screen. I just wanted to make sure that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some techniques in this video, how you can use the AEC Collection, some of the tools in there, 3ds Max, 3ds Max Interactive, to be able to provide a user experience for your customers or for other interested stakeholders in a project, to give them a better sense of project, how the project's going to fit on the site, what it's going to look like, what would it look like if I walked through the site, and what would I see. So in this particular instance, I have an Infraworks model open right here. Now I can use Infraworks, I can use Revit, I can bring my data in from any source where I can get good 3D materials with 3D solid and mesh objects. In this case, I worked on just a little sample bridge design here in Autodesk Infraworks with a new road. I added some trees, I added some buildings and some car items, some additional furniture on the site. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a fully interactive VR experience with this using 3ds Interactive to be able to use this in with an Oculus Rift or with an HTC Vive. I'm also going to show you a quick technique if you don't want to go through a lot of the trouble to make these VR experiences. We can also go ahead and just do a quick rendering using the Autodesk cloud rendering service to render this as a virtual reality experience, sort of, kind of, using the Google Cardboard. Very, very easy to use, and we'll use Navisworks for that. Okay, so to prepare my model, what I've got my my Civil 3D, my Infraworks model. I've added all the elements in. I got some vehicles. I got a building here, and I want to be able to present this out as a VR experience. So what the first thing I need to do, I'm going to use the technique is to export the model information from whatever my main design program that I want to use to visualize from. Then I'm going to import that into 3ds Max, and then that is going to be able to import that up to my 3ds Max Interactive, which used to be Autodesk Stingray, to perform the rendering functions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to choose the area I want. I'm not going to. Now, be aware that the larger your model and the more complex it is, the more it's going to tax the system, and your computer is going to be able to have to support that. So, do something a size that's reasonable for the hardware that you have. So I'm going to go ahead, and in Infraworks, I can export any part of my scene to a 3D model, a FBX file, which is what I'm going to do. So in Infraworks, I'm going to click down, and I'm going to choose the Export 3D Model command. Okay, and I'm going to do this as a polygon item. So I'm going to select the polygon of the site that I want to export. So I'm going to come down here to the beginning of my job, come across, I'm going to be able to pick up those buildings and houses, some of the trees I put in, and pick an area that's representative of what I want. Okay, I'm going to leave this in my target coordinate system. But one of the things you're going to do if you're going to export this, because of the way 3ds Max treats offsets information, I'm going to change my origin to user defined instead of the extent of my polygon, and I'm just going to get rid of those decimal places and just take it into the nearest foot. As I do this with other objects, that will be good enough. I can adjust them within the 3ds Max Interactive as I need to if something is a little bit off. And I'm going to export this data out to multiple files instead of one single file. This way I have a little more control over what I want to bring in. Maybe there are aspects of the model I don't want to make a VR. So I'm going to go ahead and export those out. And I'm going to set my location. Now, I have a location that I'm keeping my models. In this case, I made a webinar folder under my Stingray projects folder that I usually keep. And then we're going to make sure that you set up a design structure, set up a folder structure for when you're going to make your project. So I've got mine organized through all the different steps that I want. I have a place for my 3ds Max model, a place for my 3ds Max interactive model, a place for all my exports from Autodesk Infraworks. We'll do some animated exports out of 3ds Max using Civil View, a place for new texture libraries, and then this other FBX was for my Navisworks model. So I'm going to put this in my AIW FBX export, select that folder, and then you can pretty much leave everything else default. You can choose the large FBX file support if you're going to be greater than so many megabytes in size. I think it's 20 megabytes. You want to check this button, but be aware that older versions of 3ds Max and other products prior to 2017-16 will not be able to read those files. So I'm going to go ahead and export. Now this is going to take a few minutes here, probably about 2 or 3 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to show you, go back to my export model. Make sure I open up my folder. Okay, I have a library with my Stingray products. So if I look in my project folder, you can see there's all my FBX files that got exported. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up 3ds Max. Now if you haven't played with 3ds Max, we're going to be able to bring these FBX models. All I'm going to use 3ds Max for the most part is as a conduit to take my model from those FBX files into 3ds Max Interactive. So I'm going to open up a scene. I have just a blank 3ds Max scene. This is one that's using the default scene template. And under File, I'm going to come down here to Import and then hit Import again. And I'm going to browse to my folder where I exported those FBX files, and they're all listed right here. And I'm going to start with the ground data. I'm going to hit Open. In this case, I'm going to leave my current preset as Autodesk Architectural Revit and just click OK. And that's going to bring my ground scene in. Now the ground data included the road and the bridge plus any of the other furniture I added along with that component road. Okay, then I'm going to say again, import again. I'll bring in my city furniture. Again, leaving the Autodesk Architectural preset. This will bring in my house, plus any vehicles I had, plus any other city furniture. I'll say File, Import, and then I'm going to bring in the pipeline data. I have some underground data here. I'm going to bring that in. Okay, you can see the pipe selected I have underneath there. And then File, Import, Import trees. Now the trees is going to be the largest one. It's going to be the most taxing on my system. So if you're going to use a lot of trees, just be aware that it may overtax your system depending on how many you have in here. I've tested this and it seems to work out pretty well. So here's basically my scene. So I had it in Infraworks, I've exported it out, and I brought this data into 3ds Max. From this point on, I'm going to go ahead and save my file. And I'm going to throw that in my folder as well. And I'm just going to call this bridge scene 3ds Max file. That way, in case something happens and they crash, I won't have to worry about having this issue again. Now I'm ready to go. This is pretty much, if I did nothing more than just do this, start a new project in 3ds Max Interactive, I could bring this in and just browse around the site, take a look at it. But we'll have a little fun with this as we go on. So I'm going to start up 3ds Max Interactive. Now, for those of you who have the AEC Collection, you have the full license for Autodesk 3ds Max Interactive. I have some projects already made in here, but we're going to go ahead and create a new project, show you how to get that set up. When you install 3ds Max, you'll have to go back to your Autodesk Manage account, go to your products and services, and then if you expand on 3ds Max for your install there, and you go to add-ons and products, you'll see 3ds Max Interactive as a separate download, and you'll have to go and download that and install it separately, but it will use your AEC Collection license. Okay, so I'm going to start a new 3ds Max interactive VR experience. I'm going to go to my templates tab. Now, when you set up a new project in 3ds Max Interactive, there are templates that are pre-made. There's just tools for making basic characters and scene models. There's one for VR gear, for the Oculus VR gear system specifically, not just the regular Oculus Rift, but the VR gear. And also for making a Google Cardboard VR system. If you're going to make a Google Cardboard VR, be aware that you need the Android SDK data installed on your PC. Otherwise, it will not render out and you can't create a file project. But in this case, we're going to choose Desktop VR. This is good for both Oculus and HTC Vive. And I'm going to select that, and I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to browse to my folder. I'm going to save it here in my webinar folder, and this will be in my 3ds Max Interactive folder that I created as part of my project tree. And I'm going to call this Webinar Bridge Project and create. So this is going to take a couple minutes to create. Once you start this project, what's happening now in the background is 3ds Max opens up again, and it's going to start building itself, building its standard library. There's a standard scene that comes in with this template. It is just a generic level that has a living room or a museum room with various items you can walk around and interact with when you're playing. It's kind of, they call it their test level. And it takes a couple minutes for this to go ahead and bring that data. So while this is getting itself ready, what I'm going to show you is something else really quick. Before we bring that data in from 3ds Max, I'm going to go back to another product. This is Autodesk Navisworks Manage. I've also exported that same scene once again with through Infraworks through the 3D model export, and I've gone ahead and I've created a, let's see, open. I've created a there it is, render view. I've created another FBX and imported it directly into Navisworks. So this is that same bridge product from Infraworks brought into Navisworks, and I can create a quick, what we call like I call it like a quick poor man's Google Cardboard VR. Once you get your scene set and you rotate in position, so I'm going to use the tools here to kind of orbit myself around and pivot and get myself in my scene. This is where my point of view is going to be. So I'm going to start from this location. This is going to be my pivot location and my scene beginning. Now I'm just going to come over here to render, and I'm going to go to render in cloud. And when you render this in the cloud, what you're going to end up setting is I'll do the current view, and my output type I'll change to stereo panorama. Okay, so this is going to render it out as a Google Cardboard stereo panorama. Once this gets up on the web, you can get a hyperlink to it, put it in your Android or your iPhone. If you have Google Cardboard, you buy one of those little Google Cardboard viewers. You know, you can get them for like $5-6 on Amazon, or places like Target or Walmart sell a little more expensive plastic systems. ViewMaster, you know, the old ViewMaster, they make a nice item to stick your phone in. I'm going to set that for stereo panorama. I'm going to up my render quality to final, and then you can change your dimensions as you see fit. You can see it's going to cost me cloud credits to do this. It's 3 for the minimum. If I up my resolution to a higher resolution, it could cost up to 13 cloud credits. Remember, cloud credits are purchasable through your reseller. We can set you up with bundles of those. But if you have an account, if you have an Autodesk account, don't forget, when you create an Autodesk account, you do get 100 free cloud credits to use for personal. That cannot be shared amongst the company, but through your own account to use to practice these products. And then you just click the start rendering. Then that's going to take the scene, upload it to the Autodesk server. And I have already done this once. I'm not going to spend the time upload. It took me about 2 minutes to upload, maybe tops on the outside. Then what you end up with is you come to your rendering page. It's rendering beta.360, or you can just go to your gallery page. So you have your gallery. You see, I have a lot of renderings that I practice with here. You view your project, and in the web, I'm just using a Firefox browser without having the Google Cardboard and having a my cell phone. it's just a single rendered scene. But if this was on an Android with the Google Cardboard app installed, this would be split to a stereoscopic view. And as you walk and look around the site, you can't move around in the site. It's a static image as far as your eye position, but you can move. As you move your head around, the scene will move back and forth, and you'll get a nice stereoscopic panorama rendering of the site. So this is kind of a preview of what we're going to see in the 3ds Max Interactive. Okay, so going back to my 3ds Max Interactive scene, I'll go ahead and close Navisworks. So now my 3ds Max Interactive scene is set. The project is set and ready, but I'm on the default level. This is the living room level with my start point and some items in here. The first thing I need to do is set up a new level. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say File, New Level, and then it's now created my new blank level. With that, I'm going to save my level. And when you're saving your level, you're going to go into your project tree, 3ds Max Interactive, Webinar, Bridge Project, and then my Bridge Project. And you need to come down and find where your levels are. So you need to go to Content Levels. If you don't go into Content Levels, when you load up 3ds Max Interactive, it's not going to be able to find the levels. So it needs to be under Content Levels. And I'm going to call this Webinar Bridge Level. Okay, save, and that's going to save my level. So now my level's been added to the project. And now I'm going to sit here, I'm going to go File, Save All to save my project, and I should be ready to go. Okay, once that's done, I'm now going to do a couple of little things. So every time I come back into 3ds Max Interactive to work on my project, it's going to go to the default learning level. I'm going to want it to come to my Webinar Bridge level every single time. So to do that, I'm going to come here under File, and I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to go to Project Settings. And in the Project Settings property window here, the default startup level is set to VR Learning at this time, but I'm going to change it to Webinar Bridge level. So now next time I open the program, it's going to come to this level the first thing, so I can continue working on what I'm using here. Okay, once that's done, I'll close that and then save all again. So now everything is saved. I'm ready to go. The last thing I'm going to need to do is when you start your VR experience, even though I'm editing and the Webinar Bridge level is my default level to edit, it's not going to be my default level in the scene. So in order to do that, there's one particular item I have to do, and I have to come down here and change a project Lua text file. Okay, so 3ds Max Interactive is set up in the following way. Here's your actual scene view and editing window. On the right side is your Explorer, so you can explore different objects within your level. There's a property editor level and a deployer. Down here at the bottom is your asset browser. So all the assets that are loaded up and available to me to use are available via this tree. Everything is organized by folder. There'll be online assistance, there'll be my project, and other objects are in here in folders. Controls for Oculus, controls for VR Steam, which is the HTC Vive, other options, some scripts that you can put in. But what we need to do is set up our project Lua file. So in order to find that, I'm just going to come to my Webinar Bridge project at the top, and in my search panel, in order to, instead of having to dig down and find it, in the search panel, I'm just going to type in project.lua and hit enter, and then there's my project LUA file. Just double click to edit it, and it's just going to be a text file. And the only thing I need to do in this file under Project Lua is find the area that says project level name. Default project settings is going to say content levels VR learning. I need to highlight that text VR learning, and I need to replace it with the level that I want, which is going to be webinar _ bridge _ level. So next time, now when I start my actual project, when I bring it into HTC Vive, when I'm actually got the headset on and I start the program, this is the level that's going to load up in the VR experience for you. Okay, I will save this, and then on project saved, and then say save all, and everything's ready to go. Okay, so now once I get my 3ds Max Interactive initialized this way, what I'm going to do now is come back to my 3ds Max scene, and the two are linked together. You have to have both programs open at the same time. Once this is done, you just come up here when you install 3ds Max Interactive. It's going to add this interactive menu item within 3ds Max, and all you do is say interactive and say level send all. And then once this dialog box, you don't really have to check anything on this box, just leave everything default and say send and close. And it's now transferring and copy. Oops, I forgot to do something. Sorry, everybody. I got to start over on this. There's one important thing I forgot to do. If you forget to do this, things are not going to come out happy in your project. So I'm going to go back to 3ds Max Interactive and just close it and restart it. Before you send anything to 3ds Max Interactive, there's one thing that you have to do. The way that the meshes and the textures come out of Infraworks, I'm going to restart my project that's blank here. I closed it without saving, so we should be okay. Once you get your project and items into 3ds Max into 3ds Max, I need to fix these textures. And there's a script available for you, and I will put this as a download if you'd like, or I'll send a link out with the email. There is a script here called 3ds Max scripts, fix Infraworks mesh. So you need to run this little script. In my case, it's a little 3ds Max MS. You can get this from the Autodesk website. You can browse for it and Google it. I will put it in a link in the follow-up email if you'd like to get a copy of it. And all you do is copy this mesh item into your 3ds Max, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to clean up all of the center pivots, and that will reset those. And then I'm going to browse for that's what I had, that new textures folder. So my new textures. So it's going to rename all my textures in the site and fix those. So I can actually go, oops, I need to select everything here. So I'm going to select everything in the model. We're going to clean all the points, and then we're going to reset those textures. You see in my browser here now, it's renamed all the textures based upon the items that they're associated with. Now I'm ready to bring this into 3ds Max Interactive. If you forget that step, you'll get your model in, but everything's going to be kind of whitewashed, and things are going to be missing textures. So I'll go ahead and save my scene now. Let me double check my 3ds Max Interactive. Yes, so there's no content in here. So now I can come back here in my current level. Notice when I restarted it, it automatically took my level that I wanted to. Now in 3ds Max Interactive, I can say interactive, level send all, send and close. So now it's going to copy everything from my 3ds Max model up into 3ds Max Interactive for me. It only takes a couple seconds to do this portion of it, but 3ds Max Interactive is going to have to take a couple minutes to compile it. So I can come back now, and then you can see now it's importing the files. You get a little ribbon in the bottom right. When that tag goes, everything will be loaded in here. You'll also get a kind of a status at the bottom that's telling you what's going on. So it's bringing those files into my scene, and it'll configure it a little bit, and we should be able to browse around and take a look of our scene in 3ds Max Interactive. Give it a couple minutes. In the meantime, I got a couple polls here that I want to do while this is compiling. My first poll is, let me see if I can get to my polls here. And I think I've asked this every time. Launch. Okay, polls open. Are you using 3ds Max, are you using Infraworks for your preliminary models? So I'm distributing that poll right now. Let me know what you see, what you think. If we can get somebody to answer it, if nobody's answering it, just choose yes or no. I'll get a couple minutes here to see if anybody's going to answer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results. So we got 67% no and 33. So we got a couple, that's fine. I hope you get interest in it. Infraworks really is a nice preliminary design and presentation software. Call it the preliminary design software where visualization and rendering is is a side effect. It's good for doing really good design. This bridge model that I have in here, I can do some preliminary analysis on it, some structural analysis on the beams, and then from there in Infraworks, this model, we can actually take this bridge and export it directly out to Revit structural to start in some final design and the Autodesk Bridge Structural Analysis software. Okay, one more poll here I'll ask really quick. Have you experienced a VR project before? How many of you have played with VR and actually put on a VR headset and taken a look around? Okay, give it a couple more seconds. Good. We'll share that out. So we got a good yes, no. We got one person, a couple people here don't have it, haven't done it before. I really recommend it. What I'm going to show on screen here will not do it justice. When you actually put on a VR headset and you can interact with things and you can see your hands and move around and walk around the scene, it's really kind of an eye-opening experience. Kind of scary in a couple ways if you get a couple of the interesting apps out there. I know the first time I did it, it was a Jurassic Park one with a T-Rex chasing me around. It was kind of pretty cool. All right, we'll go ahead and hide that one and continue on. I think everything's compiled in my scene. Back to 3ds Max Interactive. So what it's done is it's added everything in. You can see I have a lot more items in my search tree on the right side. I can also explore my content now, look at my models, and here's my bridge scene model. So all the models and materials and textures that came in from Infraworks are now available in here. With that, I'm going to level save all and just make sure that my project is saved. Save selected. So now my level saved and everything's done. But I can't see anything on my screen yet. So what I'm going to do, the easiest way to get your scene on your screen, because it may be off in Never Never Land here, actually I can kind of see it up in the upper right corner, is to just choose one of the units here in my scene. I'm going to choose a unit like one of these meshes and just press F on your keyboard. Let's try it from here. F, there we go. And that will take you to your scene and let you roam around it. Now the controls here are similar to what you would find in a lot of programs. You can hit Shift, left, right click and rotate around. You can use your middle mouse button to pan around and your wheel to zoom in. You can also select on an item like this, press F on your keyboard and it will take you to that shot. So here you can see my scene has been uploaded. I got some nice cloud patterns in here. I have some distance fog in the background. If I was to do nothing more than just put a start area here, I could have a pretty good scene where I could walk around. But there is one thing and two things that we have to do here first. The first thing we need is to put a start. So I need a start location. If I was to come in the scene and just try to start the scene, it's not going to know where I want to be. So under the create portion of the upper right, you're going to scroll down here and you're going to find a miscellaneous section called player start. I'm just going to start myself right in the middle of the bridge. I'm going to pull the player start, and you're only going to want to do this one time. And you can go here and you can just set anywhere you want. And maybe I'll move myself back here a little bit where I can actually be at the top of the hill. Let's go to the top of the hill on this one. All right, and that is going to be my player start. So you only want to do that one time. You can hit escape and you're done. So now I'm almost ready to go, but there is one issue. If I was to just test this scene as it is now, I could press this button right here to test my level. except there's going to be one very large glaring issue. I'm going to start the tester, and I'm in, and I'm falling to nowhere. What's happening? Well, what's happening is I haven't set myself a ground to stand on, so I'm basically falling towards the center of the earth here, and there goes my scene, bye-bye. So I'm going to shut that off. So one of the first things we have to do after we set our start and get our scene in is set the physics. We have to tell the program that, hey, this stuff is not just a mesh and a pretty picture, but it's also solid, and I can't fall through it or walk through it. So in my browser, asset browser, for my scene, I'm going to choose my bridge scene. I'm going to filter these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some physics on my units. I'm going to choose my filter, and I'm going to check units. Units is a combination of everything in there. And then I'm going to have type, sort by type, so that I can see not just the FBX files, but the units. The units are the actual models in here. The unit is consisted of, excuse me, the FBX, which is the mesh file, and the materials, and any kind of scripting and functionality is all tied together at the unit. So as I import stuff into my model, if I want to add it to my scene, I drag the unit to my scene. So I'm going to sort by units. I'm going to select all the units, select the top one, hit shift, right click, shift all the units in between, and I'm just going to right click once, and I'm going to choose enable static physics, and that's going to apply a static physical state to these items so that I don't fall through the scene anymore. So now you can see it's going to be data compiling. It takes a couple seconds. When you do it, don't do it twice, or you might end up with some problems. Just let it run once. When it says data compile completed, my physics are set. So now if I press the button to test the level, I shouldn't fall through the ground anymore. And there I am. So I'm standing on the ground. At this point, I am moving around and kind of getting an idea. I can use my WSAD keys to kind of roll around the site and see where I'm going. Okay. So right now I'm kind of stuck on the bridge because these guardrails are not letting me pass. Okay, so I'll show you some other ways that we can get around here. But this is just a generic situation of just looking at the site. So right now, if I was in VR and I put this on my headset, I get a pretty good idea of what's going on. But we need to add some functionality and some controls and getting around here. So I'm going to show you how to set up your controllers to work right. Now, by default, and I'm not going to be able to show you the controls in this item. Unfortunately, my computer only has 3 or 4 USB. By the time I get the Oculus set up, I'm using 4 USBs plus my HDMI. It's just too much. In the live demo, I could do it, but to try to do it with the microphone and headset on, I just can't. But everything else that I'm going to show you here can be done with other controllers to do. Now with 2019, with the 3ds Max Interactive 2018 and previous, you had to choose your model whether you're going to use an HTC Vive or an Oculus. Now it's all combined in one. All the scripts are filed together into one unit. Regardless of what system I run it on, it's going to work just fine, and the controllers are pretty much set up. But there is one little tweak we have to make, because right now we can just basically teleport anywhere we want to, on top of trees, on top of poles, wherever. I'm going to cancel that. We're going to have to set up some limits on what we can teleport around here. So I'm going to clear my filter. And in my scene importer, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go down to the VR Oculus, actually the VR tools, and I'm going to expand on that. Select VR tools, and in the models, I'll double pick that. And I'm looking for an item called functionality teleport. And I'm going to double click on that, or I could type it in the search path here. I could type in functionality underscore teleport, hit enter. Oops, no, I guess it's not going to find me. Make sure my filters are off. Yep, let's cancel. So functionality teleport, what I want to do is find the functionality teleport flow editor. So it's the flow editor I'm going to do. So I'm going to show you the flow editor in here. That's under VR Tools, Models, Functionality, Teleport, Flow Editor. We're going to double click on the Flow Editor, and that's going to open the Flow Editor. There we go. So this is kind of like the programming language inside the VR system. This is where I'm going to use to set up functionality. Right now it's set up, this is the default settings for using the controllers and teleporting around. Everything is grouped. The commands come in as these little blocks with data information, and you just kind of plug everything together. Don't be intimidated by this dialog box. You really don't have to do much in it. All you need to do in the 2018 version, it was separated out with its own grouping. But what you're going to do is in the center group of this default template, there'll be a set of tools that are not grouped independently of anything else. And you're going to scroll right in here. And what you're going to do is you're going to find this section that says vector components equal and then set bool variable. And what I want to do is replace this dialog here, this equal, with another function. So what this is basically telling me that, hey, if get move location, and if that move location, if the normal vector component is equal to 1, then yes, we can teleport to it. If it's not, then it will not say that you can teleport. We're going to replace this here though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and in my command menu, I'm going to come down here and find the math function. I'm going to find the math, oops, not that one. I clicked too early, sorry. Right click, math, and it's going to be numeric, and I'm going to choose greater than or equal. So I'm going to replace the equal with greater than or equal. I'm going to set the B value by clicking where it says B, and in the dialog box that come up, so I'm going to say 0.5. Okay, and I'm going to replace this Z to A. Just click and drag, and this value to bool. And then I'm going to take the equal and delete it. So I've replaced that equal with the greater than or equal B.05. That's all you got to do in this flow editor. Just say File, Save, and this will let my HTC Vive or Oculus use the controllers to teleport to anywhere on the model that has a surface that I can stand on. Then I'm going to close the flow editor, and then my model will be ready to go. Okay, so I got a nice static model. Again, I can play it. We'll zoom around here. Again, looking at the preview here, I can come up the side of the hill. Now this guardrail, because the physics are turned on, are not letting me get around it. But I can get beyond the guardrail, turn around, and then come back down the bridge and come back down the side. So if I wanted to walk around, if I'm using the HTC controllers, I would just be able to press the button on the controller. It's going to project a green circle or green arc out, and that will let me, when I let go of the button, that will let me work around. So again, if I have full VR system, I can stand under the bridge, I can look up at the abutments, I can look at the pier, I can look at the site. Okay, I'm going to show you another couple pieces of functionality here. I have some underground utilities in this as well. Maybe I want to be able to show those off by changing the textures from solid to transparent. Now, if those of you who've seen this Autodesk webcast, this is very similar. It's a similar functionality, but it's a good way to show underground utilities too as well. So I'll cancel that. So what I'm going to do is these textures are assigned to each of these objects. So within the program itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a logical choice. So if I press a button or press a keyboard button, it will change the values from one item to maybe a transparent item. Okay, so I'm going to start here. What I'm going to do is, you notice the scene has its own level flow editor and it's empty right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I got to go back to my scene and I got to find out what texture. So maybe I want to push this this ground here to transparent. So what I got to do is pick on that ground, and in my property area I can see that grass 2, and then the material is grass 2. Okay, so grass 2 is what I want to find. So first thing I got to do is I have my grass section here. I need to make a transparent copy of this. So I'm going to come up here in my search bar and I'm going to type back up in my bridge project content for my level, for my bridge scene. I'm going to type in here grass, GRASS 2, and hit enter. And that will find grass 2. So there's my material for grass 2. What I'm going to do is right click on that material and I'm going to duplicate it. and that will make a carbon copy of that grass 2 material. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to get rid of that 1, and I'm going to underscore, and I'm going to type in transparent. Okay, so I've made a copy of it. Now I'm going to change the properties of this transparent material. I'm going to come over here, and in my content editor, the parent resource is a standard shader. I'm going to change that shader, and down here, if I type in standard, there's a standard transparent shader. So instead of the regular full opacity one, I'm going to change it to a transparent, select OK. And then once I do that, I can come down here and change my opacity, and maybe I'll change that down to like 40%, 0.4. I'll save that back, and now I have a transparent material. So I have grass 1 that's solid opaque, or grass 2, and then grass 2 transparent that is partially opaque. Now I need to set up a switch within the program to let me change this. So up here in my flow editor, the first thing I need to do is set up my unit. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to type in unit, and I got to find it, data level unit. So I'm going to pick up this level unit, and that unit needs to be set. And I'm going to set that with the name. Remember, that was grass 2. So I'm going to right click there, and I'm going to type in grass 2. Okay. So basically, that's the object has the material header called grass 2 that uses the grass 2 material. So that's the unit I'm looking for, grass 2. And I'm going to go do a function here called get unit mesh. So under material, well, I just got to find it. Every time I find this, get unit mesh. It's under unit, get unit mesh. So that mesh, again, the mesh name is grass 2. Okay, and I'm going to connect unit to unit. Now I'm going to put some switches. I'm going to add another one here under material, and it's going to be set mesh slot material. So I'm going to change, so for this unit mesh, grass 2, there's a slot. That slot is the slot, and it's using the grass 2. So I'm going to set the material for that slot. Okay. First, I'm going to choose the slot name, grass 2. And that slot, instead of grass 2, I'm going to sit here, and that is going to be, oops, nope, slot name, grass 2, got it. The resource, I'm going to select that resource, and then I'm going to start typing in grass 2. So grass 2, transparent. Okay, so I'm going to basically fill this unit mesh grass 2 with that grass 2 transparent. Again, it's going to be unit to unit. You can rearrange these as you want to keep them clean, and then mesh to mesh. So for this unit, it's going to go to the slot material, and this slot material mesh is going to come back to that unit mesh placeholder. And then I'm going to select this and duplicate it. And I'm going to set this resource to just grass 2. Okay. And again, unit to unit, mesh to mesh. Now I just need a switch in here. So I'm going to add a switch. In my case for this, because I don't have the Oculus, I'm going to right click under input. I'm going to say keyboard button. Okay. The button name is going to be, I'll choose the T for transparent. Okay, so that's my button name. If I press and hold it, oops, it's going to go in. If I press and hold the letter T, it's going to use the transparent material. That transparent material is going to come back to the unit mesh, and it's going to make my scene transparent. And I'll copy this, duplicate that, and if it's released, that means when it's released, it's going to go back to the regular grass 2. So let's save this, save level. Let's test it out. And you could do this again. So if I had another material, I would go ahead and basically I can copy this whole thing over, set another material, and just change the settings there. So let's go back to our level viewport. Let's go into our scene and test it out. I'll launch my scene. Again, I'll use my WSAD keys to move around. I got an underground gas line or underground pipeline here in the side. I got to move up around this guardrail so we can see it. Again, I could change the physics on that so there's no physics on it. Now, if I press the T button on my keyboard, you can see that the grass has turned transparent and I can see where that underground material is. Heck, I can even see the depth of the bury of that power pole that I have in the ground there. Let go of the T key and the material goes back to normal. So you can do this when you set up your scene. You can keep pressing. Notice the entire texture for that one goes T. So if I want to do the pavement or the concrete, I would just go back to that flow editor and make that change again. So that's a nice way to be able to walk the site, press the T button or press a button on the Oculus. In my level flow editor, instead of the keyboard button, I would come to input and I would say Xbox or the Oculus Touch and use one of the touch buttons instead. The Touch is the name of the controller for the Oculus Rift system. Okay, let's do one more little fun thing. We got a few more minutes. I'm going to add an animation to my scene. So back in 3ds Max, if you haven't played with 3ds Max, if there used to be, and actually there still is, you get this installed with something called, if you're using the AEC Collection, called the Civil View tools. The Civil View tools were there for you to be able to import items from Autodesk Civil 3D and bring it into 3ds Max to render them out. And one of the coolest things in there was the ability to add vehicles that move, and you have the populate. You can add people that walk. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a vehicle traveling down the road so I could throw that in my scene. Now, in order to do that, I have to have a pathway here. If this was a Civil 3D project, I could draw a polyline in there, export it out, and bring it in that way. But because I don't have one, I'm just going to draw one really quick. I'm going to change my view from perspective to orthographic and come to a top-down view. And I'm just going to do a short run here. In my standard primitives, the 3ds Max, the draw items are around here on the right side. I'm going to choose to the splines section of my primitive objects, and I'm just going to draw a line. And this is just actually a polyline. And I'll just start it up here in the intersection, and I'm going to click points. And it's actually placing points. You just can't really see them very well. And I'm going to come down here, and I'll put one there, and maybe one there, and maybe one there, and I'll finish right there. Okay, it's drawn a spline, it's just at 2D elevation. So right here, I'm going to open up another scene window. So I'll do a split window. I'll set this to the top view, change my view to the default shading. And here is a front view. And there you can see my spline that I drew. It's down at elevation 0. Right up here is your modifier list. I'm going to go to the select and move. While that spline's still selected, I'm just going to grab the X button. And I'm just going to drag that up so I can see it. So there you see as I drag it up, it doesn't have to drape on the surface. I'm just going to drag it up above the surface so I can see it. Once that's done, I'll go back to my selection tool and I'm going to modify this. I'm going to add some curvature to it. So with that still selected, I'm going to go to the modifier tab, expand on that, and go to the vertex section. So now I can collect each one of these vertices, roll down the properties window, find the fillet section, and I can start adding curvature to each vertex. Kind of bring some curvature in there. It's like I'll be driving on the wrong side of the road here a little bit. That's okay, I'll go ahead and modify this. I can also move those positions. So for each one of these items, I can go back to the move and I can slide those curves. Now these are spline curves. Just be aware of that. So you kind of got to fix them up as you go. But I'm just doing a really quick and dirty, oops, let's move that. Let's move that over this way a little bit. There we go. Let's move this one over here a little bit. Let's fix that spline curve so it smooths out a little bit. So you're going to have to play with these a little bit. Again, this would have been nicer probably to do in Civil 3D. So I didn't have so much of a of an issue getting my curves in where I want to, but you'll get the general idea when you see this this guy start rolling down the hill. I'm no 3ds Max expert by any means. Let's fix this spline out a little bit. Let's bring this back in. Okay, that's probably good enough. It'll do I'll add a little curve here. Let's move this node over a little bit. Let's add a little curve here. Let's move this node down here a little bit. Let's move this node over a little bit. So I'm just setting a little path here. That's good enough. We'll do one more here, and we'll just let the car just squeak around that corner wherever it wants there. And one more. Okay. So I'm just applying numbers. So that's my path. I'm just going to leave that path there for now. Yeah, it's going to do a little wow here and slip off with the shoulder, but that's fine for this demonstration. So now that I've got that in here, I'm going to come up to my Civil View tab, go to Civil View, and go to the Object Placement Style Editor. And now it says, hey, by the way, your shape is currently selected. Do you wish to use this as the parent shape? I'll say yes. So that's my parent shape. That's the pathway my vehicle is going to follow. I also need a surface to drape it on. So now I'm going to select the surface and click that roadway. So that becomes the surface this vehicle is going to drape on. I'm now going to go ahead and add a vehicle. Let's come down here and add an SUV. Let's add a Chevy Suburban. Okay, so that's going to be a Chevy Suburban. We'll set the speed to 25 miles an hour roughly, and we'll start at the start station and let it go. So with this, I'll hit the apply button, and now it's going to increase the little warning there says it's going to increase the frame rate. So now I have that object in there. Not save that. I'm going to go back to my single rotational seed. I'm going to go back to my perspective view and go to an orthogonal view, and let's take a look at this car. Let's make sure it followed the path. There's my Suburban, and as I move the slider along, you can see it's animated and following. There's where it almost goes off the road and turns back in. You should put the start scene right there so people stand there, kind of freak them out. Okay, once that's there, what I need to do now is export that out. So I'm going to come down here to my vehicle. Not only do I have to set the vehicle, but I also have to choose the wheels and everything else. So here's the vehicle section in the Scene Explorer. I'm going to right click, and I'm also going to say and select child nodes, and that will select everything in there. Once that's done, I'm going to say File, Export, Export, and I'm going to go to my libraries, actually File, Export, Export selected, not the whole thing. Otherwise I get the whole scene over there. Go to my folder. Now I added an extra folder here for animated FBX. Call it Suburban. Save it. This time I'm going to use the Autodesk Media and Entertainment instead of the Revit one. And down here under animation, I need to make sure I turn on animation, and under bake animations, I need to make sure I choose bake animations. Okay, so that's going to add everything in there, including the animation of that. I'm going to say okay, and now I get a couple warning. That's fine. Just go ahead and hit okay, and those objects are now exported. I can now come back to 3ds Max Interactive, go to my level viewport, and I can import that. So now under my materials, under my bridge scene, under my models, I'm going to make a new folder under there, create folder. We'll call this animation. Okay. And I'm going to select the animation, and I'm going to come here and right click, and where's my import button? Webinar Bridge Project. Deployer, Explorer, there we go. Do I need to save my scene? File, save all. All right, it's not letting me hit my import button. Why is that? Content. Oh, I got it. There we go. Whew. There was getting an issue there. Content, expand that, animation, hit the import. Okay, I'm going to browse for that animated FBX, that Suburban FBX file. I'm going to import everything here, and you got to make sure you click the button that says animation. New or updated skeleton needs to be selected, and also I create a separate animation folder typically just to organize myself. And I'll hit the import button. And it's going to import that data, compile it, and bring it into my scene. So there's my animations, there's my Suburban. There's my model under animation, Suburban. The unit is what I'm going to want. Don't forget, if you want to get hit by the car, have the car push you around, you need to right click and set static physics. If you don't set static physics, you can stand on the bridge, the car will just go right through you. Maybe you just want to leave it that way. So to bring that into my scene, what I'm going to do is just drag that into my scene anywhere. It doesn't matter. Okay. I'm going to come here in my property editor. I need to transform that to the right location because my 3ds Max model and my Infraworks Interactive, the 3ds Max Interactive model are in the same location. I just need to right click to set these all to 0, and that sets, as you can see, highlighted. I'll hit the F. It set that in the right location to start. Okay. One of the last things I got to do here is come down to where the unit animation is. Under animations, select that, and you need to come down here. And so that's why I put that in the animation folder. This is my Suburban animation. In the animation compression, uncheck these 3 boxes. Otherwise, that vehicle is going to float above the ground by 2 or 3 feet. Okay. The last thing we got to do to bring that in to actually make it animate is we need to make a trigger so that it starts the animation based upon something we can do. Now we can trigger it based upon a button press or a keyboard press. We're just going to have it start when we come in the scene. So I'm going to come back to that level flow area. This is where I set up that mesh creation, and I'm going to set up a new animation trigger in here. So I'm going to right click in my flow editor, go to animation, and choose play animation. Okay. What animation am I going to make? I'm going to click that. I'm going to type in Suburban. Actually, there it is. It's the only animation in there. Okay. I need a trigger. Right click, event, level loaded. That goes to play. And I got to tell what unit is being animated. So I got to come here to go to data, go to level unit. That's going to be my Suburban unit, unit to unit. That's it. So it's going to say with the Suburban unit, that's the actual body and mesh itself, play the content Suburban animation when the level's loaded. That's all I've got to do. And now I can file, save my level. Let's go and test it one more time. And I'm in my level. I'm going to turn around, look up the hill, and there goes my Suburban coming down the hill. Oops, looks like I got to check that animation compression. And you can see there it is floating by. Let me double check. Oh, you know what? I forgot to save that. Let me go back down to animations, animation, compression. I forgot to hit the save button. There we go. Now we'll play a level. Now you can notice that the wheels are white on it. It doesn't quite match the textures. You can come in and modify those textures and apply textures similar to the way I did the textures for the transparent ground. But in this case, it's going to just be a white vehicle. But still, if I was doing this in 3D, that looked pretty good. See if I can make the screen bigger before I get a chance to get stuck on it. No, there it is. There we go. So this is a bigger view, audience view of the animation. Again, there goes my vehicle, 26 miles an hour, rolling down. You notice the wheels even animate. Some of the models in 3ds Max and in Infraworks come in better than others when it comes into the scene. I could have run the texture, probably texture fixture on that before I brought it in. The one thing that the model will do is just act as a nice, the animation model will go ahead and loop. So once it reaches the end, it's going to spawn again right at its start location. So we can continue to loop that up. There it is again. It starts and it keeps rolling. But you could set up, just a generic traffic pattern. But anywhere you look at, it actually looks really kind of cool, and it's a nice way to be able to present the scene to your customers and to others. If you don't have any questions, it looks like Dynamo. Yeah, well, John, thank you. I just saw that question. It does look like Dynamo, the flow editor. It works in the same way. It probably is the same kind of situation. And you're not limited to just the Infraworks model. I know that Revit Live is also available for doing VR experiences of your site. We don't have that type of situation in the Infraworks world, but we could definitely do it and drop Infraworks. Because I can bring Revit models directly in Infraworks, I can add those to a live scene like this as well and continue going. And then, like I said, this really looks great in the VR system. I can't, this scene you see on the screen does not do it any justice whatsoever. With that, I thank you everybody for coming. If you have any questions, there will be a follow-up email with some information. You can go ahead and email us. This webinar is recorded. We will have a copy of it available to you. There will also be a link to see it. We will post it on our blog and our YouTube page as well. I thank everybody for coming. I hope you have a wonderful holiday and vacation and get some much needed relaxation. Thanks a lot for coming. I hope this was informative, at least entertaining anyway. And I hope to see you in our next webinar come January. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.